From a rejected Dirty Harry script, too dark even for Clint Eastwood, to a prison sword fight with phone book armor, this Denzel Washington thriller hides some of Hollywood's wildest production secrets. Behind the scenes of this revenge tale lurks everything from deliberate, non-blinking villains to controversy-plagued rap songs and shocking deleted torture sequences. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about Ricochet. Fact 1. Originally a Dirty Harry script. Tipped. Before Ricochet became a Denzel Washington vehicle, it started life as something completely different. Writer Fred Dekker, best known for cult horror films like The Monster Squad and Night of the Creeps, was a massive fan of the Dirty Harry franchise starring Clint Eastwood. Dekker felt that the sequels after Magnum Force had lost their way, so he decided to write a spec script that would bring the series back to its gritty roots. His story centered on a criminal that Harry Callahan had arrested years earlier, who, after being released from prison, dedicates his entire life to systematically destroying the detective who put him away. Dekker sent his screenplay to producer Joel Silver, who forwarded it to Eastwood for consideration as the 6th Dirty Harry film. The response came back quickly and was not what Dekker hoped for. Eastwood dismissed the script, reportedly calling it too grim for the franchise. The irony of this rejection was not lost on anyone familiar with the series. After all, these were the same films that sparked controversy in the 1970s for their seemingly pro-vigilante stance and depictions of police brutality. The original Dirty Harry had featured scenes of extreme violence and moral ambiguity that shocked audiences at the time. Yet here was Eastwood, the man who had anchored 5 increasingly dark films about a cop who routinely broke the rules and bent the law, saying this new story crossed a line even he would not approach. The rejection likely had less to do with actual content and more to do with timing. By 1991, Eastwood had moved on from the character, and the previous film had underperformed both critically and commercially. Fact 2. Kurt Russell almost starred. After Clint Eastwood rejected the Dirty Harry version of Ricochet, the project did not die. Instead, it transformed into something new. Fred Dekker, determined to see his story reach the screen, began reworking the script with producer Joel Silver. The plan shifted from making it a franchise installment to creating an original standalone thriller. During this transition period, Dekker had ambitions beyond just writing. He wanted to make his directorial return after The Monster Squad, and he had a specific actor in mind for the lead role. That actor was Kurt Russell, who at the time was riding high on action hits like Escape from New York, Big Trouble in Little China, and Tango and Cash. Dekker set up a meeting with Russell to pitch him on starring in Ricochet, while Dekker himself would direct. The meeting happened, and by all accounts, Russell listened to the pitch. But something went wrong. In later interviews, Dekker admitted his own failure in that room. He said that before walking into the office, he should have reminded himself of the stakes, should have told himself he absolutely had to convince Kurt Russell to do this movie. But he did not, and ultimately, he failed to win Russell over. The actor passed on the project, and with Russell out, Dekker's dream of directing also evaporated. The project then went through another round of rewrites, this time by action screenwriting legend Stephen E. D'Souza, who had written Die Hard, Commando, and The Running Man. A new director was hired, Russell Mulcahy from Highlander, and a new star was cast, a young Denzel Washington fresh off his Oscar win for Glory. Fact 3. John Lithgow never blinked. Creating a memorable movie villain requires more than just good acting and a well-written script. Sometimes it demands physical transformation and uncomfortable commitment to a character trait that most people would never notice. John Lithgow understood this perfectly when he signed on to play Earl Talbot Blake, the psychotic hitman seeking revenge in Ricochet. Lithgow decided that his character needed something unsettling about his appearance, something that would make audiences feel deeply uncomfortable whenever Blake appeared on screen. His solution was both simple and incredibly difficult to maintain. He would train himself not to blink. For most people, blinking is an automatic reflex that happens thousands of times per day without conscious thought. Suppressing this natural response requires intense concentration and results in dry, irritated eyes. But Lithgow committed fully to the technique, practicing for extended periods before filming began. Throughout the production, he would hold his eyes open for unnaturally long stretches during his scenes, creating an eerie, reptilian quality that made Blake seem less than human. To enhance this effect even further, Lithgow also wore a special contact lens designed to give the impression that his character had a glass eye. The lens altered the appearance of one of his eyes, adding another layer of wrongness to his gaze. The combination of the unblinking stare and the artificial eye created exactly the unsettling effect Lithgow wanted. If you watch the film closely, you will notice that in scene after scene, Lithgow's character barely blinks at all, his eyes remaining wide and fixed in a way that feels fundamentally wrong, making every moment he is on screen feel dangerous and unpredictable. Fact 4. The knee brace commitment method acting can take many forms, and sometimes it involves actual physical discomfort for the sake of authenticity. John Lithgow had already committed to the unsettling eye work for his villain character, but he took his dedication even further with another physical choice. Early in Ricochet, Denzel Washington's character shoots Blake in the knee during their first confrontation, an injury that would logically affect the villain for the rest of the film. Many actors would simply remember to limp occasionally or rely on the director to remind them between takes. Lithgow chose a different approach entirely. He wore an actual medical knee brace throughout the entire production. The brace served two purposes that were equally important to Lithgow's performance. First, it created genuine physical restriction and discomfort, giving him a constant reminder of his character's injury. This meant that his limp was not something he had to consciously perform or remember to include. Instead, it became a natural part of how he moved throughout the film. The brace made certain movements genuinely difficult or painful, which translated into authentic physical behavior on camera. Second, and perhaps more importantly, the brace ensured absolute consistency across every single scene. Continuity errors are common in films, especially regarding injuries that characters are supposed to carry throughout a story. An actor might limp heavily in one scene, then forget about it entirely in the next, creating jarring inconsistencies that break the audience's immersion. By wearing the actual brace for the entire shoot, Lithgow eliminated any possibility of such errors. His limp remained consistent in every frame, whether the cameras were rolling or not, creating a seamless physical reality for his character. Fact 5. Denzel's extreme workout regimen. When Denzel Washington signed on for Ricochet in 1991, he had already won an Academy Award for Glory and was establishing himself as a serious dramatic actor. But this role required something different from his previous work. The script called for multiple shirtless scenes where his character would be vulnerable, exposed, and at times humiliated by the villain. Washington knew that these moments would put his physical appearance under intense scrutiny from both the camera and the audience. Rather than rely on camera angles or lighting to hide any perceived flaws, Washington decided to transform his body into the best shape of his life. His approach was not moderate or casual. He committed to an intense workout regimen that would have broken most people. For 4 full months before filming began, Washington worked out 3 hours every single day. This was not 3 hours per week spread across several sessions. It was 3 hours daily, 6 days per week with only 1 day of rest. The training regimen was comprehensive and exhausting, combining cardiovascular work, strength training, and athletic conditioning. Washington was already in good shape, but he pushed himself to a new level of fitness specifically for this role. The dedication paid off. When you watch Ricochet, the shirtless scenes that could have made a lesser actor feel vulnerable instead showcase Washington's impressive physique. The opening carnival sequence features him stripped down to his underwear in front of a crowd. A scene that works because Washington looks like someone who could believably be both a street cop and a rising public figure. The commitment to fitness was not vanity. It was character work, ensuring that every frame supported the story. Fact 6. Test audiences rejected brutal violence. The version of Ricochet that audiences saw in theaters in October of 1991 was significantly toned down from what director Russell Mulcahy originally filmed. According to multiple reports from people who attended early test screenings, the initial cut was far more violent and disturbing than the final product. Test audiences reacted so negatively to certain scenes that major cuts were required before the film could be released. Director Russell Mulcahy later gave interviews where he discussed some of the material that ended up on the cutting room floor, and one scene in particular stands out as especially brutal. In the deleted sequence, John Lithgow's character Blake has kidnapped Denzel Washington's character Styles and is holding him captive. Blake proceeds to physically abuse Styles in an extended torture scene, beating him repeatedly until Styles actually vomits. But here is where the scene becomes even more disturbing. After causing Styles to vomit, Blake then gets a sponge and tenderly, almost lovingly, cleans him up. This bizarre shift from brutal violence to gentle caretaking was apparently too psychologically unsettling for test audiences to handle. Mulcahy explained that this deleted scene was meant to explain a continuity point in the final film. In the version audiences saw, when Styles is found wandering the streets, he has vomit on his clothing, but the film never shows how it got there. The missing torture scene provided that answer, but at a cost the studio decided was too high. Test audiences also objected to the racial dynamics of watching a white character torture a black character in such a degrading way, adding another layer of discomfort beyond just the violence itself. The uncut version has never been released. Fact 7. Same universe as Die Hard movie universes were not a common concept in 1991, decades before Marvel made them a central part of blockbuster filmmaking. Yet Ricochet and Die Hard exist in the same fictional world, connected through a single character most audiences probably did not notice. That character is Gail Wallens, a television news reporter played by actress Mary Ellen Trainor. In Die Hard, released in 1988, Wallens appears as a pushy, somewhat unethical journalist who shows up at Nakatomi Plaza to cover the hostage crisis. She famously interviews the brother of a terrorist using a fake name, nearly compromising John McClane's rescue operation. Her character embodies a certain type of sensationalist news media that puts getting the story ahead of ethical considerations. 3 years later, Mary Ellen Trainor appears in Ricochet playing a character with the exact same name, working the exact same job as a television news reporter covering crime stories in Los Angeles. This is not a coincidence or an Easter egg. Both films were produced by Joel Silver and written by Stephen E. D'Souza, making the connection deliberate. The character functions identically in both films, representing the media's role in creating and destroying reputations through selective coverage. In Ricochet, Wallens covers both the initial arrest that makes Denzel Washington's character famous and his later downfall when he is framed by the villain. The fact that these two films share a universe is particularly interesting because they came from different studios. Die Hard was a 20th Century Fox production, while Ricochet came from Warner Brothers. Despite this, the filmmakers maintained continuity with Gail Wallens, suggesting she exists as a constant presence in Los Angeles crime reporting, regardless of which hero she is covering at any given moment. Fact 8. Phone book armor prison fight. Some movie moments are so bizarre that even detailed descriptions fail to capture their full absurdity. The prison fight scene in Ricochet absolutely qualifies as one of these moments. When John Lithgow's character Blake first arrives in prison, he is assigned a cellmate named Kowalski, played by professional wrestler Jesse Ventura. Ventura was a massive, imposing figure standing well over 6 feet tall with a bodybuilder's physique. Blake immediately establishes dominance by calling the much larger man a cream puff and easily overpowering him. But their conflict is not finished. Later in the film, Blake and Kowalski are allowed to settle their differences in what appears to be a standard prison fight in the cafeteria after hours. Except there is nothing standard about what happens next. Before the fight begins, both men are given improvised armor, made entirely of phone books and newspapers that are duct taped to their bodies. The pages create a layered protection similar to ancient samurai armor, covering their torsos and vital areas. Then, instead of fighting with fists, both men are handed long metal poles that have been sharpened into giant prison shanks, essentially creating crude swords. What follows is an actual sword fight, complete with thrusting, parrying, and strategic strikes, all while both combatants are wrapped in paper armor. The visual is utterly surreal, watching two grown men duel with makeshift weapons while wearing what looks like rejected art project costumes. The fight ends when Blake drives his sharpened pole through a newspaper photo of Denzel Washington's character that Kowalski has taped to his chest, killing Ventura's character in the process. The entire sequence lasts several minutes and is played completely straight, with no acknowledgement of how ridiculous the premise is. Fact 9. Highlander homage scene directors often reference their previous work through subtle nods or thematic callbacks, but Russell Mulcahy took a different approach with Ricochet. The prison sword fight between John Lithgow and Jesse Ventura was not just a bizarre scene in its own right. It was a deliberate, shot-for-shot homage to one of Mulcahy's most famous sequences from his earlier film. In 1986, Mulcahy directed Highlander, a fantasy action film about immortal warriors who fight with swords across different time periods. The climactic duel in that film featured specific visual techniques that became signature moments for Mulcahy as a director. These included dramatic backlighting through windows, sparks flying from clashing metal, specific camera angles that emphasize the movement of the fighters, and most notably, a tracking shot where the camera rolls along the floor following the action from a low angle. 5 years later, when shooting the prison fight in Ricochet, Mulcahy deliberately recreated all of these elements. The cafeteria windows provide the same backlighting effect. The metal poles clashing create sparks identical to those in Highlander. The camera angles match the earlier film's choreography. And yes, Mulcahy included the famous rolling floor shot, tracking along the ground as Lithgow and Ventura battle with their improvised swords. For fans of Highlander who caught Ricochet in theaters, the homage would have been immediately recognizable. The lighting, the composition, even the editing rhythm mirrors the earlier film. Mulcahy was essentially having a conversation with himself across two different movies, using the same visual language to tell two very different stories. The homage works on multiple levels, both as a fun Easter egg for those who notice and as proof of Mulcahy's consistent directorial style across genres. Fact 10. Released. Same month as Cape Fear. Sometimes two films with remarkably similar premises arrive in theaters at nearly the same time, creating an unintentional rivalry. In the fall of 1991, this happened with Ricochet and one of the year's most anticipated releases. Ricochet premiered on October 4, 1991, with its story of a criminal escaping from prison to terrorize and destroy the life of the law enforcement officer who put him away years earlier. Just 1 month later, on November 13th, Martin Scorsese released his remake of Cape Fear. That film starred Robert De Niro as a convicted rapist who, after serving his prison sentence, returns to exact elaborate psychological revenge on the public defender he blames for his imprisonment, played by Nick Nolte. The plots are nearly identical in structure. Both feature a respected legal professional whose past success is built on having put away a dangerous criminal. Both criminals spend years in prison obsessing over their captor and planning revenge. Both escape or are released, and then systematically attack their target through psychological warfare, going after family, members, and professional reputation rather than simply committing murder. Both films explore themes of justice, revenge, and the corrupting influence of violence. The timing was particularly unfortunate for Ricochet. Cape Fear had the benefit of Martin Scorsese's directing pedigree, Robert De Niro's star power, and a massive marketing budget from Universal Pictures. Critics and audiences gave it far more attention than the Denzel Washington thriller. While Ricochet made a modest $21 million at the box office, Cape Fear earned over $180 million worldwide. The comparison highlighted how similar stories can have vastly different receptions based on who tells them and when. Fact 11. Kevin Pollak's William Shatner impression. Kevin Pollak has built a career playing supporting characters and best friends to leading men. But his other talent as a master impressionist sometimes makes it into his film roles. In Ricochet, Pollock plays Larry Doyle, the loyal police partner and best friend to Denzel Washington's character Nick Stiles. During one scene early in the film, Pollock's character does an impression of William Shatner, specifically as Captain James T. Kirk from Star Trek, complete with the famous halting speech pattern and dramatic pauses. This was not something written into the script. It was pure Pollock bringing his comedy background into the role. The impression appears briefly, but it is unmistakably the same Captain Kirk routine that Pollock had perfected in his stand-up comedy act. By 1991, Pollock was already well known in comedy circles for his ability to mimic Shatner's unique cadence and physical mannerisms. His impression captured not just the voice, but the whole performance style, including the way Shatner would pause mid-sentence, as if struggling to remember his lines, a habit that became iconic. Years later, when William Shatner himself was asked about various celebrities who had impersonated him, he specifically mentioned Pollock's work. In interviews and at comedy roasts, Shatner acknowledged that Pollock had created one of the most accurate and funny versions of Captain Kirk. The validation from Shatner himself elevated Pollock's impression from tribute to the definitive comedic interpretation of the character. What makes the Ricochet moment particularly fun is how naturally it fits into the scene. Pollock is not performing for the camera. He is simply being the kind of guy who does impressions to make his partner laugh, which adds authenticity to their friendship dynamic in the film. Fact 12. Ice-T's controversial song. Removed. The soundtrack to Ricochet features a title song performed by Ice-T, who also stars in the film as Denzel Washington's childhood friend turned drug dealer. The song, Ricochet, plays over the end credits and was released as a single by Warner Brothers Records. But this song has a complicated backstory that reflects the intense controversy surrounding Ice-T in the early 1990s. Originally, Ricochet was recorded for Ice-T's fifth studio album called Home Invasion, which was scheduled for release in late 1992 through Sire and Warner Brothers Records. However, Ice-T had recently faced a massive controversy over his thrash metal band Body Count and their song Cop Killer. The backlash was enormous, with police organizations calling for boycotts, politicians including President George Bush and Vice President Dan Quayle publicly condemning the song, and Time Warner facing intense pressure to drop Ice-T from their roster. In response to this climate, Ice-T agreed to postpone the release of Home Invasion and remove certain tracks that might cause additional controversy. Ricochet was one of the songs removed from the album despite having already been recorded and cleared for the film soundtrack. The decision was part of a larger negotiation between Ice-T and the label about what content would be acceptable. Eventually, the situation became untenable. Ice-T left Warner Brothers Records entirely in January of 1993, signing instead with Priority Records. When Home Invasion finally came out in March of 1993, through the new label, Ricochet was included as part of a bonus disc packaged with copies of the album. The whole situation illustrates how fraught the relationship between Ice-T and major labels had become during this period. Fact 13. Alan Silvestri's unreleased Q film scores often contain music that never makes it into the final movie, but sometimes these unused pieces are preserved in other ways. Composer Alan Silvestri created an intense, Predator-style action score for Ricochet that emphasized pounding percussion and sweeping orchestral drama. The score was performed by the Skywalker Symphony Orchestra and released by Varese Sarabande as a soundtrack album shortly after the film premiered. Most soundtrack albums simply collect the major musical cues from the film in sequence, but the Ricochet album includes something unusual. Hidden among the tracks is a previously unheard piece of music that Silvestri composed specifically for the Silver Pictures logo that appears at the beginning of Joel Silver Productions. This alternate fanfare was never actually used in the film or in any other Silver Pictures production. Logo music is a unique category of film composition. It needs to be short, typically under 10 seconds, instantly recognizable and energetic enough to make an impression while not overwhelming what comes next. Many major production companies have signature logo themes that audiences hear before every film they release. Silvestri's unused Silver Pictures cue falls into this category. The fact that it was composed, recorded with a full orchestra, and then shelved speaks to the collaborative nature of film production where not everything created makes the final cut. By including it on the soundtrack album, Silvestri and the producers preserved a small piece of musical history that would have otherwise been lost. For film music collectors and Silvestri fans, this unused cue offers a glimpse into the creative process and the extra work that happens behind the scenes on every production. Fact 14. UK censorship cuts. International film releases often face different censorship standards depending on local laws and cultural norms. When Ricochet was prepared for release in the United Kingdom, it ran into specific legal issues that required changes to the film. The original UK video and cinema releases were cut by approximately 5 seconds to remove content that violated British law. The first cut involved a butterfly knife. There is a brief scene where someone is shown twirling a butterfly knife in a flashy, skillful manner. This type of knife is illegal to own, carry, or sell in the United Kingdom under the Criminal Justice Act of 1988 and the Offensive Weapons Act. British censors have a strict policy of removing any scenes that glamorize or demonstrate the use of illegal weapons, especially when shown in a way that could be instructional. The butterfly knife twirling scene was deemed to fall into this category and was removed entirely from UK versions. The second and more significant cut involved child pornography. In the film, the villain frames Denzel Washington's character by planting child pornography magazines in the briefcase of a murdered colleague. The original US version showed brief shots of the magazine covers. British law, specifically the Protection of Children Act of 1978, is extremely strict about any depiction of child exploitation, even simulated or fake material used as props in films. The censors determined that even these brief prop shots violated the law. Rather than simply cutting the scene, the filmmakers provided an alternate take where the magazine covers are obscured or turned away from the camera, making it clear that something inappropriate is present without actually showing it. Interestingly, different UK home video releases handled these cuts differently, with some restoring the butterfly knife footage while maintaining the magazine's censorship. Fact 15. 7 elements survived. Rewrites, screenplay. Development is often a long process involving multiple writers who revise and reshape the story until it barely resembles the original draft. Fred Dekker experienced this firsthand with Ricochet after his Dirty Harry spec script was transformed into an original property. After Dekker's initial screenplay was rejected by Clint Eastwood and Kurt Russell passed on starring, producer Joel Silver brought in Stephen E. D'Souza to do a complete rewrite. D'Souza was a heavyweight action screenwriter with credits including Die Hard, Commando, The Running Man, and 48 Hours. His job was to take Dekker's core concept and make it work as a Denzel Washington vehicle directed by Russell Mulcahy. The rewrite was extensive enough that the Wombayes final credits reflect the division of labor. Dekker shares story credit with Menno Mages, who also did some development work, while D'Souza received sole screenplay credit. In interviews years later, Dekker was asked about how much of his original vision made it into the final film. His answer was brutally honest and surprisingly specific. He said he counted 7 elements from his original screenplay that survived all the rewrites and made it to the screen. 7 elements out of an entire feature-length script. Dekker did not specify exactly which 7 elements these were, leaving fans to speculate about what might have been preserved. Presumably, the basic revenge plot structure remained, the idea of a criminal returning to destroy the life of the person who arrested him. Perhaps certain character dynamics or specific set pieces also survived, but the vast majority of what audiences saw in Ricochet came from D'Souza's rewrite rather than Dekker's original Dirty Harry concept. For Dekker, this must have been bittersweet, getting story credit on a Joel Silver production starring Denzel Washington, while knowing that almost nothing of his original work remained.